Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am Megan, the Healing Foods Coach, and I am coming to you live from Colchester, England on Saturday, the 5th of April. And I'm so glad that you've taken time out to join me. So first thing I want to say is thank you for taking time to join me and watch these videos. I super appreciate it. And one quick thing I simply want to get out of the way before I dig into today's topic. As you may see, I am currently dealing with a fairly bad rosacea flare-up. Now, I was initially embarrassed. I was going to not make a video. I was going to wait till it cleared up and just sort of try to pretend that I wasn't dealing with a rosacea flare-up, because I was feeling like somehow I've been doing carnivore wrong because I'm dealing with rosacea still. And then I realized that's ridiculous and that's silly. So I want to get this out of the way. Carnivore has helped improve so many of my health issues. My fibromyalgia is in remission. I have no more brain fog. I've lost 45 kilos or 100 pounds for those of you not on the metric system. I have gone from being in a wheelchair and unable to work for almost 8 years to not needing a wheelchair the last time I needed my wheelchair was almost 2 years ago, and I've been back at work full time. So right there, amazing, amazing healing. My gut is healing. My IBS is under control. My anxiety is under much better control and management. I'm not struggling with bulimia any longer or severe depression. All sorts of big, beautiful bonuses. My hair has finally grown back thick and strong. This is actually my natural hair color. It's not gone completely gray like it had at one point. It's not crispy and falling out like it used to. I've gotten my eyebrows back. My eyelashes don't fall out anymore. I don't deal with hypothyroidism any longer. And I've been able to come off all of my pain medications. So you would think that dealing with rosacea would be relatively minor to me. Here's what I've come to understand is that as great of an improvement as we can experience with carnivore, and clearly I've had some amazing, amazing improvements, some things take extremely long time to heal. Again, in spite of being carnivore almost 5 years now, it was only a couple of years ago that I was able to get active and mobile and not need my wheelchair. And that took 5 years of carnivore to get 3 years of carnivore to get there. And another 2 years before I was out of the wheelchair and back at work. So it takes time. I've always had rosacea. It's never flared up quite to this extent before. But then I realized I am also going through menopause and my hormones are completely nutty and all over the place. And just because I'm carnivore does not mean I'm not going to have hormonal fluctuations. Of course I will. In fact, that is supposed to happen regardless of carnivore. I do know that my night sweats seem to have eased off. I hesitate to say too much because I don't want to jinx it, but I've not had a terrible case of night sweats for some time. I do get hot flushes, but not as often. And so one of the major triggers for me with regards to rosacea, and I think this might be the case for, I know some women at work one deals with psoriasis, one deals with eczema, and stress and anxiety are major triggers. Same goes for rosacea. So right now I'm going through menopause, and that's a stressful time for the body. So there's the hormone shifts, as well as the stress of going through the hormone shifts. And also work has been extremely stressful. Work has been stressful. I work in a call center, and we have been getting a highly increased number in the volume of calls we take, and we don't have enough staff yet to cover all those calls, which makes it for a stressful time to deal with customers in a timely fashion. So work is stressful. Stress is a part of life. I am learning to try to reduce my stress whenever I can. It doesn't always work. In fact, sometimes it doesn't work at all. So when I have a crazy busy day because the calls just keep coming, for example, I know I'm getting stressed, and that causes my face will suddenly get very red and flushed, and it will trigger the rosacea. As well as the fact, as I said, I'm in menopause, so my hormones have not yet settled. I'm only a year into menopause. I probably have at least another year or so left of these symptoms. Possibly longer, I hope not, but maybe. And in my personal life, we do have a beloved family member who is dealing with a terminal illness. We know that our landlord has decided to sell our property that we rent, and so we're going to have to move house in a few months' time. And I totally trust, theoretically, I trust that it's all going to work out, because it always does. However, moving house, stress at work, family health crises, all those things are cause for stress. And of course, never mind the hormone thing, rosacea. And I wanted to be honest about that, because this, I think, happens to quite a few women. We do, and from what I can understand, we often go through changes to our skin and our hair, as well as, gaining abdominal weight and whatever else comes with menopause. And that's even for women who are carnivore. Now, some women are lucky and they do seem to sail through menopause. I wish I was one of them. I'm not. I wish I was. However, I'm grateful that I've not needed to, at least I haven't needed to take hormone replacement therapy, which means over the next, hopefully, year or so, maybe less, I should be on the other side of this, in which case my rosacea won't be as aggravated as much, in which case I am not going to be feeling, work. We've got more new people starting, so the stress of dealing with a high volume of calls with not enough people to take them, that's going to change soon as more people get trained and brought up to speed. And as far as, family life crisis and health issues, it's out of my control. And I just have to trust that those involved are getting the best care possible. And that's all I can do. Now, why did I want to start my video with all of that? Because I feel like it's important to be completely open and honest with you guys. That's me. That's who I want to be. As a certified nutrition coach, and I am actually a certified nutrition coach, I've had lots of clients who, have come to me, they've asked for advice, and I would get anxious because I thought, I can't be doing a good job with them if they choose not to follow my advice, if they decide that they don't want to give up the processed junk food, or I might recommend, hey, why don't you try eating at the start of your day, making sure you eat plenty of food. If you're going to drink tea or coffee, save it for later. Make sure you get good sleep. All of those things are great bits of advice. But the reality is, some people, sometimes they just want to hear a quick fix. And the reality is, we have spent years, decades, dare I say, harmfully putting crap into our bodies, and it's going to take more than a minute to fix it. And what I've come to realize is that now that my thyroid is running perfectly, well, I don't know about perfectly, but it's running beautifully. It's reaching optimal levels. My triglycerides are way down. My HDL is up. My LDL is down quite a bit. In fact, my lipids specialist even applauded me for following a keto type diet. And she did say, hey, just keep an eye on the protein, make sure you're not causing yourself any harm by having too much protein. And we know that's not something to worry about. But otherwise, she said, the fact that you've removed all of these other carbohydrates and processed sugars has been a huge reason as to why I can see your bloods have come under control. As I've shared in other videos, I have hypercholesterolemia, which simply means my body is unable to effectively clear the LDL cholesterol that it produces. So once it's used in the places where it's needed, normally the body would get rid of the broken down or the used low density lipoproteins, whatever has been used or not required, the body would then get rid of. Okay. In a perfect situation. My body doesn't necessarily make too much. It's just that what it does make, it cannot effectively clear out. So And most of my, at this point, the majority of the low density lipoproteins that my body produces are highly atherogenic, which simply means they can cross into the arteries and build up as plaque. And that's where the risks can develop for cardiovascular disease and other problems. So, and it's genetic, can't get rid of it. I inherited it. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate that one. I had no choice in the matter. But she herself said, and I'm on like 5 milligrams of a statin, just to keep it under what they deem a healthy level. Other than that, she said she was very pleased with my bloods, and she was impressed at how well my keto approach was for my overall health and well-being. So this is coming from a lipid specialist, all right? And why do I share that? I've talked about it lots before. The reason why is because I ate the crap that I did. Let me rephrase. There was a lot of highly processed junk food in there. Okay, the really addictive stuff, the stuff that came in packages, whether it was in boxes or little mini grab share bags, whether it was like baked goods that came from the cafe, whether it was stuff that came in a little box at the grocery store, like that was shelf stable. In other words, it was filled with fillers and chemicals and all the other stuff so it wouldn't turn bad, right? The reason why I did eat a lot of that. Not gonna pretend I didn't. I did. But I also came to discover just how bad other forms of carbohydrates were for me. Now, again, let me just throw this out there. If you want to follow a low carb, keto, ketovore, or truly carnivore approach, which is zero carb, depending where you want to be on the spectrum, that's okay. If that's, you would find great results from that. However, most of us are coming into this way of life and this lifestyle of changing what we eat because we did follow the old food pyramid guides. We did follow the ones that were put out in the, well, there were some that came out in the 70s, but really the ones that went around the world, at least when I was a kid, came out in the early 80s. And that was talking about how 55% of our total calories should come from carbohydrates. And of that 55%, 45% of it should be starchy carbs. Okay. Breads, pasta, rice, cereals. So I mean whole grains, but also like packaged breakfast cereal. That was what was promoted. And not the whole wheat kind necessarily, not at that point. It was just anything that was a starchy carb was good for you. Baked potatoes, etc. Now, you come into the 90s and they of course made some adjustments because it became clear that maybe we need to, they believed that maybe instead of having regular pasta, make it whole grain pasta, more fiber, it'll make you less hungry, you won't eat as much. That may help with weight loss. And also lots of processed seed oils, margarine, of course, as opposed to real butter or beef tallow or ghee or bacon grease or any of that, right? Making sure that everything, if you were going to have dairy, make sure that it was low fat or skim, because lower fat was better for you, because it was believed that fat was the problem. Now, we've come to since discover those of us, let me rephrase. Standard nutritionists will still teach and go by, whether it's the Eat Well guide here in the UK, whether it's the My Plate guide, I think that's what it's called in Canada and the US, or perhaps even other parts of the world, or it's also referred to as, for example, the Canadian dietary guidelines, the US dietary guidelines, or the UK dietary guidelines. Okay. And this is still based on the fact that 55% of your caloric intake is meant to come from carbohydrates, and 45% of that 55 should be from starchy carb sources. So again, grains, cereals, legumes, pulses, breads, pasta, all that sort of thing, as well as, of course, include not necessarily higher starch not necessarily super starchy fruits, but higher sugar content fruits. Okay. And of course, we in this community who have discovered the truth know that that's not right. We know that that's not how it should be. And that in fact, it should be flipped on its head. Well, guess what? I'm excited to say that there is now officially a carnivore food pyramid. Now, it's not something that's promoted, say, on the NHS or the various Canadian Health Organization websites. It's not anywhere on the US food guidelines yet, but there is one out there. Now, I was watching this incredible video earlier today, and I was so impressed. So, I like to watch videos, of course, as we all do from time to time. And the one that I was watching, and I'm just double checking to make sure I get this right, is by a YouTube channel called Carnivore Squad. And they put together a great video talking about how a low carb, animal-based carnivore food pyramid is now available. It's not in mainstream media yet, but I have hope that it will be. And you should definitely check out their channel. They have some incredible content there, and it's absolutely worth exploring. So this low carb, animal-based carnivore food pyramid, okay, is basically based on the following information. It was based on the Harvard Carnivore Study that was done back in 2021, okay, as well as, and sorry, let me go back a second. And that actually included some very well respected authors, including, I'm just going to read this for a minute because I didn't memorize it. I apologize. But Linda Lennertz, who's an MD, a PhD, the assistant professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, as well as the attending physician at the Division of Endocrinology at Boston Children's Hospital. It also included, as an author, Owen Henn, Henn, who has his certifications are MSRD and LDN. He is a dietitian and researcher at Boston Children's Hospital. And one of the other authors, and there's many of them, but these are just a few highlighted ones. One of the other authors also was David Ludwig, who is an MD and has an MD and a PhD. He's a professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, a professor of nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health, an endocrinologist and a researcher as well at Boston Children's Hospital. Why do I mention these names? Because these are intelligent, well-respected individuals who worked on this carnivore study back in 2021. And their findings were actually then published in a very well-respected scientific journal, Current Developments in Nutrition, which did promote a low-carb, carnivore, animal-based lifestyle for optimal health and healing. Now, the findings of this Harvard study, and 2,000 people were studied following a carnivore diet. So the Harvard study played a role in developing a new food pyramid, which was reviewed and released under the publication of Nutrients, and this was in March of this year. So they included the key findings from the Harvard study, along with the food pyramid that they've developed. Why is this important? Because they've based the food pyramid not on highly processed, high carb items that essentially would promote products being sold by different companies, whether it's boxed cereals, whether it's packaged snacks, cakes, and junk food, or even just a high volume of high levels of carbohydrates, even through just seeds, grains, fruits, and vegetables. These were findings that basically developed the food pyramid based on actual scientific research and findings that were discovered in the Harvard Carnivore Study. Basically, the things that ancestrally we've always eaten for optimal health, and the things that actually a food guide should be based on, which is eating the things that provide us optimal nutrition and health, as opposed to promoting things that really were not very healthy or good for us to begin with. So on the very bottom, and so instead of that, say, where you might find the 55% recommendation for carbohydrates, you've replaced that now where the majority, where you've got instead animal sources of protein. Ruminant animal meat is listed as a priority. So that could be beef, lamb, or bison, followed then by non-red meat. So poultry, pork, fish, seafood, eggs, dairy if you tolerate it, working your way up to certain low carb vegetables like onions, garlic, broccoli, avocado. Well, actually, that's a fruit. Broccoli, spinach, maybe some nuts and seeds for people who tolerate them. And then, of course, including some low carb fruits like berries. So this pyramid is actually facing the right way around. So if you were to take the old food pyramid and flip it upside down, that would be the new food pyramid. Now, the reason why I suggest that you check out the video that's also out there by the guys at Carnivore Squad is because they put some really great visuals together. And let me just say, as they're describing the different contents, they're showing you images of like steak being prepared, ground beef being made, visuals of cheese and all these delicious things. Let me just say, if you weren't hungry before you watched it, you might be hungry by the time the video is done. And their videos are far more interesting than perhaps me just going on about it. But my question is, now that this is out there, and I think there's going to be an even greater push to try to get this promoted with the U.S. Dietetics Association, nutritionists, trying to get this particular food pyramid into mainstream, which I hope it happens. But my thought, and I was excited because I'm thinking, well, obviously somebody's put to great effort they funded the study themselves. They did not rely on sponsorship from food companies or pharma companies, which many of the studies in nutrition, that's how it works. So you might have a study on whether sugar is detrimental, and I think this happened a few years ago, but it was done by, it was funded by Coca-Cola. So how unbiased would the study have been to begin with, right? Or what are the negative effects of saturated fat? But the study was funded by Big Sugar way back in the 70s, right? So these guys got their own funding sorted. They did not go to corporate sponsors when they did the study. So we can trust that at least there's not conflict of interest, which is amazing. Okay. And I'm excited because we're finally getting a bit of traction to say, look, this diet does work. And here are other people who can show that it can work. And, it's interesting. We've known about the ketogenic diet, for example, since the 1890s. It was often prescribed for people who suffered with type 2 diabetes. And even low carb is not a brand new concept. We maybe didn't call it that back in the day, but it has always been prescribed for people who ended up with type 2 diabetes. Get rid of the sugar and the carbohydrates because it was discovered that was the cause of the obesity and the insulin issues leading to type 2 diabetes. Now, why we couldn't have recognized it at the time, well, we know why. Big food eventually came along and they want to make a profit. And so you mass produce the food as much as possible, make it as addictive as you can so people keep coming back and buying it. And they kind of do work hand in hand. If you keep people addicted to these foods, I use the term loosely, that makes them sick, well, then here's a good reason for big pharma to keep making medication for illnesses that could probably be prevented to begin with, right? Now, does that mean it happens to the same extent here in the UK? No, not necessarily, although I think there is definitely some of that going on. Same with Canada, same with other countries in Europe. But what I am so excited about is that this study's now come out. There has actually, this food pyramid has been reviewed and published in a reputable journal, which is Nutrients. And I'm hoping this is a sign that we will finally start to promote this type of eating going forward. Whether you want to have more of a just low carb approach, whether you want to have more of a keto approach, whether you want to be full out zero carb and call yourself a animal based or carnivore, you decide how you want to label it. But hopefully this will finally get into the mainstream, because it's not just some crazy fad. You know, there are studies that have been done to show that ancestrally, this is definitely how we ate in order to reach optimal health. And hopefully that can start to make changes so that we can see less and less people who are obese and diabetic and sick. Some things, you know what? Some things we can't prevent. It doesn't necessarily cure everything, nor will it. You know, for example, just because you're carnivore doesn't mean you're never going to fall and break your leg or sprain your arm. Totally different thing. However, I would imagine that the healing time and recovery is a lot better if you are eating a low carb or zero carb diet. Why? Because your body isn't spending all of its time trying to fight off inflammation from the food you're eating. It can just get on with the business of healing you. And after the damage we've done to ourselves for decades, some things like eczema, psoriasis, rosacea will improve, but they may not completely go away. And that's the other thing I just want to clarify, is that I know that this will heal up. Last summer, it was completely gone. I didn't have a whole lot of stress in my life. I wasn't working yet. Life was pretty chill. And, you know, I got out in the sun, got lots of exercise, but overall life was pretty chilled. And so my rosacea healed up last year. These sorts of things that have stress as triggers, as well as the fact that I'm well into menopause now, they can just come back. It doesn't mean I've done carnivore wrong. And maybe I'm saying that more to reassure myself. But for those of you women out there who are dealing with, whether it's dry skin, whether it is something more inflammatory like rosacea or psoriasis or eczema, keep up with the carnivore. Please keep going, because even if you're having a flare up, it's probably a lot less severe than if you were not following a low carb or zero carb diet. Okay. And sometimes our bodies just take a whole lot longer to deal with anxiety and stress than everything else that it's got to deal with as far as healing goes. But I'm excited. I know we don't have anything like that yet here in the UK, but I'm hoping that this is a sign that we are going to start seeing more stuff being worked on. I know there was a lot of folks that are out here that are UK based, who are, you know, doing tremendous things and have huge followings on YouTube, and who are doing all kinds of great things in the carnivore space. I know that Carnivore Muscle is one. I know that Coach Stephen is one. And I've had the privilege of either being on their show and or just chatting with them by email. And I know that we want to see these changes. And here's to hopefully putting the same kind of push forward. I don't know who's going to be able to do it. I don't know who's going to get that funded or how the research would be looked at on this side of the pond. But I'm hoping this is something we can get going, because imagine if we can take all of these anecdotal stories and actually use them for excellent changes. Do you know what I mean? One of our favorite baristas, his family owns the cafe. He works there part-time. He is a medical student in his last year. He himself started to follow a ketogenic diet 6 or 7 weeks ago. He himself cannot help but rave about the improvements he's seen. And he's even recommended for a couple of the patients he's been working with who have type 2 diabetes that they themselves start going on a low carb or ketogenic diet. He's even gotten his father, like his parents are from the Mediterranean, so there's a lot of rice and potatoes, but he's even gotten his father to go on a ketogenic diet. And he himself has seen some weight loss and health improvement. So if we could just convince more and more people that this is not some weird, radical, crazy thing, and that it is actually beneficial for our health, wow, how many more people would we see getting healthy and making those changes and just seeing overall health improvements? How much money could we potentially save the NHS in medications, for example? I'm talking about for like type 2 diabetes, maybe hypertension, high blood pressure, even some patients who maybe have had already a heart attack, be it mild or otherwise. They themselves may be able to have less heart medication going forward if they look after their diets. Imagine the impact that this could have. Wow. I don't know if you guys are excited about this or not. And for those of you who are out there in the space who follow me, let's try to come up with a plan. I don't know about maybe round table something. Get in touch with me. Let me know your ideas. You can message me, you can leave a comment, or you can email me at Megan@healingfoodscoach.com. Let's try to get something going here, because I would love to see the positive impact that this kind of change could make over here in the UK. We have a large obesity problem here too. We may not have nearly the amount of population that, say, the US does, but we have enough, and we've got quite a few. We've got more and more people heading into that category on a regular basis, and so much of it is preventable if we can educate people, if we can help people. Whether you are like me, if you're a coach of some sort, if you're a nutrition coach, if you are new to the space but you have a story to tell, let's build something. Let's make something amazing happen. Again, I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I'm excited for the possibilities. Anyways, that was it today, guys. I had to share this with you because this is coming, and let's get in on the ground floor. Let's see what we can do to make it happen. So that is it for this week's video. I wish you all good health and a great Saturday, and all the best to you. Thank you so much for all of your incredible encouragement and support. It really, really does mean everything to me. And again, please do check out, as I've mentioned before, these guys are amazing. It's a really great video. I think you'll really enjoy the way it's put together. And if you could give Carnivore, sorry, I have to just keep checking I've got it right. Check out Carnivore Squad. These guys are fantastic, and there's so much content on their channel that you should definitely check out. And feel free to share this video with anyone else you think it might be of help to, anyone you feel it might be of interest to. Please pass it on. I will see you next time in the next video. All the best, guys. Thanks as always for your incredible support. And again, last plug for my services. I am going to be keeping my special rates in place, at least for the month of April. I have coaching sessions available. If you are truly interested in getting some assistance in improving your health, feeling better overall, and hopefully even losing some weight, please get in touch. Yeah, definitely. And again, whether you want to be more low carb, more keto or ketovore, or if you're gung-ho and you want to go full out zero carb, get in touch and let's talk. Let's see what we can do together. So it is www.healingfoodscoach.com, or email me at Megan@healingfoodscoach.com. That's it for today. Love you guys so much for your support. Thank you for everything. See you in the next video. Bye for now.